Good evening, viewers. I'm your host, Mohammed Nazir, guest with Nazir, and you're watching Sheffield Live TV. Today, I am honored that we have our distinguished guest with us. He's a solicitor, very enthusiastic, young lawyer, a student from local school of Sheffield, and then he graduated from Liverpool. Now I'll introduce my guest. Welcome to my show, Manoj. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Yeah.
Could you please introduce yourself with our viewers?
My name's Manoj Athi. I work at the law firm Athi Law in Sheffield. We've also got an office in West Bromwich and Dromfield.
I see. And I've seen your CV that you started your early days of school life from Sheffield.
Yeah.
So which school you attended?
I went to Birkdale School from the age of 3 until I left in the sixth form, 18, and then I went to Liverpool University after that.
So what brought you here, in this profession?
Well, my father is a solicitor. He's been a solicitor since, I think, 1979 when he qualified. So he gave me some good direction and moved me into law. So
yeah. It means we may say that you have followed the footsteps of your dad.
Yes, I think you'd say. But I didn't study law at university. I did business studies and then cross-qualified after that. I went to Chester College of Law to do my conversion course.
Thank you. Viewers, because at the moment a lot of things are discussed in media about small businesses, and that's why we have picked up a topic about the sale and purchase of small businesses. Manoj, for a quick view of yours about sale of small business, so what is involved, just for easy words for our viewers?
Well, small businesses are the lifeblood of the economy, and solicitors play a very important role in making sure the transaction's smooth. It can usually entails assigning a lease to a new person, assigning the goodwill of the business which has been built up, so that the new person can carry on the business as it was.
And in terms of sale of business, when you're drafting a contract, so what are the brief contents of the sale agreement? Well,
you have obviously the purchase price, what you're going to buy the business for, how you break down the purchase price. So you'd pay a certain amount for the fixtures and fittings, you pay a certain amount for the goodwill, and a certain amount for the actual premises itself or the lease. So the way it's apportioned is in the contract, and all the important terms of the transaction would be in the contract as well. Say, for example, if there's any VAT due, or which staff are going to be transferred over to the new business.
And of course, there will be a list of fixtures and fittings?
Yes, if there's fixtures and fittings list, if they are selling the fixtures and fittings, it should be attached to the contract, yeah.
You have mentioned in the start of your, about the sale, about the assignment. Is it right, assignment means the transfer of the lease?
Yeah, the assignment of the lease, it would be a transfer from the current tenant to the assignee, it's called, yeah.
So in the whole scenario of the sale of business, what is the role of the solicitor on behalf of the landlord?
The landlord, the solicitor for the landlord would draft what's called the license to assign. And before he would draft that and give it to all parties, he needs to ensure that the new tenant coming in is a good tenant. So he'd ask for references, usually a bank reference and 2 trade references, and then he would be able to draft the license then.
So we may say it's a formal authority or a permission from the landlord for a transfer of the lease.
Yeah, yeah.
And in this document, what is the more involvement? Because of course 3 parties are signing it, the new tenant, outgoing tenant, and the landlord. So what are the contents? What are the simple summary of these? What would be,
you mean what's drafted within the license? The license would, it's basically authority for the lease to be transferred to the new person. It would have details of the original lease, who the parties were, and who the new parties are going to be. Yeah. And
when a landlord is authorizing that transfer can happen about the lease, so what is the role of the outgoing tenant? Will he sign any guarantee or anything that he will be assuring that if there will be any problem or any issues?
Yeah, I mean, the outgoing tenant usually signs what's called an authorised guarantee agreement. Now, from I think 2002, when the new law for leases came in, current tenants would sign an authorised guarantee agreement, so the liability is then guaranteed for the landlord. So if the new tenant who comes in doesn't pay, then they can potentially go after the previous tenants.
Thank you. Viewers, you are watching Guest with Nazir. We are discussing about the small business sale and purchase, and whatever we are discussing, it does not amount to legal advice. It is only information. And if you have any questions, you can email me and I will try to take up these questions in my coming shows. You're watching Guest with Nazir on Sheffield Live TV. Manoj, now we move forward towards the goodwill.
Yeah.
Because obviously the goodwill is a very important factor of any business. So how the new owner will assure himself and protect himself that there will be no hiccups in coming days, there will be no competition between the person who is selling and the person who is buying?
Well, you'd draft what's called the assignment of goodwill. So within that you'd have the terms you just explained. So the new person has the goodwill of the business to himself, for example the name, or if the business has been built up over a certain amount of years, he would take on that the goodwill then. Yeah.
And both parties will sign, so they will be bound?
Yeah, both parties would be.
Will there be any restriction that in coming days the person who is selling the business, he or she will not compete within certain radius miles, and there will be some years restriction on the person?
You can, within the assignment, put in a restriction for the new person. Can't, say, for example, open another business, a similar business within a 2-mile radius. That's usually a common term to put in there, yeah.
Because a lot of our viewers have like hot food takeaway or restaurant businesses.
Yeah.
So in this type of scenarios, I'm sure the solicitor will be very strict about this.
Yeah, because if you're selling a takeaway and then you don't want that same person to open a new takeaway right next door, because it kind of goes against what you were doing in the first place. So it's a very important term to put in the agreement. Yeah.
In terms of completion, how long it takes to completion of a small sale of business and purchase? So the whole procedure, how long it takes?
Yeah, I mean, it can vary. Usually we say it's between 3 and 6 months. People get quite shocked that's a long time, but there's a lot of things involved in the whole transaction. Obviously everybody would like to get it done quicker, but it can take a bit of time, yeah, longer than usual.
But sometimes what happens, and viewers will agree with me in this point, that sometimes people say a lot of delay is happening. So what are the main causes of the delay in these type of transactions?
I mean, for example, it takes sometimes for a bank reference, I've seen them take 3 or 4 weeks, so that's a month already gone. So before the parties to the agreement instruct solicitors, maybe it would be a good idea to try and get the references together. For example, go and get a couple of trade references, maybe tell your bank that I'm going to be getting a bank reference, is there any way I can do it quicker, so they can, maybe jump ahead to get things sorted out.
And what's about the law about the payment of the landlord solicitor's fees? Because that is also sometimes become a controversial area between the incoming tenant and outgoing tenant.
Yeah.
So what is the general principle about it?
Well, there's nothing written in law to say that this person has to pay the landlord's fee. The usual procedure would be that the incoming tenant would pay the landlord's fee, because the previous tenant would have done the same, so it would make sense for that to carry on. So for example, if the incoming tenant paid it, it wouldn't be fair for him to pay it again on the next one, then he's paid double fees then. So, but there's nothing set down and written. It can vary, it's just between negotiations of all parties really.
Manoj, we are discussing about the small sale of businesses. So what is your experience about the provision about the authorized guarantee agreement, although we have in brief discussed? So in detail for the viewers' ease, so can you tell me what is the benefit of authorized guarantee agreement?
The benefit is primarily for the landlord. So what the AGA, which is a shortened version, actually does, it guarantees the liability. So the outgoing tenant would sign the authorised guarantee agreement and then guarantee if the current tenant, the new tenant coming in, doesn't pay the rent, then the landlord could potentially go after the previous tenant. So that liability carries on until that lease is assigned again, and that person drops off.
So it means once the next assignment happens, the other tenant will come out of it automatically.
That's it, yeah.
And this is like a guarantee to the landlord that if there will be any areas or if there is any breaches of the lease, so the outgoing tenant is taking the full responsibility of it.
That would be, yes, and it would be not just rent, it could be dilapidations, which is any repairs need to be done to the building. It could be any breach of the lease.
So, because now we're talking about the transfer of the assignment of the goodwill, assignment of the lease in shorter term, or in the easiest word, we can say transfer of the lease and transfer of the goodwill.
Yeah.
But when lease is going to be taken, for the sake of argument, if somebody is taking a new lease, so how you see the importance of survey of the property and taking the condition of the property, because obviously it is a long-term commitment.
Yeah.
So how you see the importance of the survey and the condition of the property?
It's very important actually, because it depends on the clauses within the lease. If there's a repair obligation in the lease, for example, if the lease is fully repairing to a good standard of repair, then the building has to be at that standard. So the landlord, if it, for example, if a wall falls down inside, then the tenant would have to, fix that. So to get the schedule of dilapidations, it's very important so that the new tenant knows if there's any issues with the premises.
How do you see that if in the new lease the pictures and all the condition detail, if it will be added in the lease, do you think it's quite good idea?
It is a good idea. So, I mean, people will forget in 3 or 4 years' time what the building looked like when they took the lease out. So the pictures are there. If there's any arguments between the tenant and the landlord, they can refer back to that document and it's quite clear exactly what condition the building was in at that time. Yeah.
Thank you, Manoj. You're watching Guest with Nazir on Sheffield Live TV. Today we have studio guest, Mr. Manoj Athi. He's a solicitor, and we are discussing about the leases, sale of business, purchase of business. Manoj, now we proceed towards our rapid fire questions. Who is your favorite player?
In any sport, or just...
Any sport.
Tiger Woods is probably one of my favourites, yeah.
So it means you like golf?
Yeah, big golfer.
I see.
Yeah.
And your favorite place?
I would say probably when I went travelling, Argentina was one of my favourite places to go to, yeah.
So what is the reason for that?
Just, I'd never been there before, didn't know what to expect, and it was a beautiful country. You've got deserts at the top, and then you can go to, glaciers at the bottom. Everything is in one country. Food is nice. It's a really, really nice country, yeah.
So it means you also big fan of the food, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
You can see.
And now the last rapid fire question, which is very important. The best moment of your life?
Well, my wife's having a baby in 2 weeks, so that's probably going to be the best moment, but I've not had that yet. So I would say probably getting married last year. That was, that was up there really, yeah.
I see. And you married here in United Kingdom or back home in India?
We had 2 weddings. We had one wedding here in England, and then we got married in Goa as well, in India. So we had both.
Manoj, now we are proceeding at the end of our program, and when obviously somebody is buying a business, it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
And if somebody is buying a business, who takes the responsibility of the building insurance and the business insurance?
Right, the buildings insurance is responsibility of the landlord. He needs to ensure that his building is insured. He can't, ask the tenant to do it, because if the tenant decides he doesn't want to pay the premium and something happens to the building, then the landlord's lost his building. So he makes sure that the building's insurance is in place, and then usually gets that the premium back from the tenant, which is a clause within the lease. That's the usual procedure.
So it means it is a responsibility of the parties as per lease also. Sometimes different leases have different provisions.
Yeah.
It could be responsibility of the landlord and the tenant. But what is the importance of the business insurance? Because obviously every business have its own risk, and in this world, when you are taking a risk, obviously you have to cover this risk, and the only way is the insurance.
That's right. I mean, for solicitors, we have compulsory indemnity insurance, which is for any claims of negligence. So each business has a different risk involved. For example, a fish and chip shop would need insurance against fire, which would be, you know, a higher liability than it would for a law firm, for example. So each business would have different the different risks involved, and the premiums would vary. Yeah.
Thank you. It's quite detailed answer. Now we proceed a very important part of the question, which is about the license to alteration. Because if somebody is taking a shop or a building and they want to do a lot of alteration,
Yeah.
so what is the importance of license to alteration and how it could be made easy for the clients?
Yeah, the license to alterations gives the tenant the right to make alterations to a premises. For example, if it was a takeaway and the tenant wants to change it to a gambling shop, for example, then he would need permission of the landlord to knock any walls down, to make changes, to change the use of the premises as well, and that document would ensure that he's got permission to do that. So it's quite important.
And how solicitor or the parties can achieve the quick result in sale and purchase of a business?
I think communication between all parties is key. So if all solicitors talk together, you know, and everybody and the tenants that we explained at the start, if they can get their documents ready early or before they instruct the solicitors, then things can proceed quicker. Certain things can slow things down, as we mentioned before, getting references from the banks, that can take time. So if everybody can do things at a reasonable time, yeah, it should be quicker, yeah.
Thank you, Manoj. Now we are proceeding at the end of our program. It was nice to have our studio guest, Mr. Manoj. Manoj, what is your message for our viewers? Because obviously everybody has personal experience. So what is your short message for our viewers?
Thank you for watching today. You know, if you have any legal advice, as you said before, then just email in and should be able to answer your questions.
Viewers, this was your own show, Guest with Nazir. Keep watching Sheffield Live, and thank you watching our show. And my detail and email is shown on our screens. And if you have any legal questions, please send us so we can answer these questions in coming shows. Thank you very much. Keep watching Sheffield Live TV.